Hi everyone, today I want to talk to you about file system operations and specifically how to interact efficiently via terminal with your file system. So day-to-day operations that you do anyway, how to make them more efficient and more performant. So before we start, let's do a really quick refresher on what is file system. File system is essentially layers of abstractions. I'm talking here about Linux file system or Unix file system, not about Windows specifically, but there are similarities. So starting on the left, you have the user space, whether this is an application or a terminal in our case, and then this encapsulates the layer of various abstract commands like opening a file, closing it, searching, and so on. And there's a logical file system that translates those operations into the virtual file system that serves as an interface between the actual physical implementation of your file system and the user commands that you issue. So it would translate the opening command to actually finding a file and locating it and opening, showing on the screen. And the physical file system uses various partitions that are logical separation of the data. So the data on disk is just a bunch of ones and zeros at the end, and all the abstractions to the left enable us to work with directories and files. So this is obviously very simplistic, but just wanted to set the level so we are on the same page as to what we're going to work with. So what are common file and directory operations, which we're going to talk about? Well, obviously, we have creation, organizing, security, compression. You can add more. So those are the things that you do every day anyway. You're going to open a file, you're going to write to it, create a directory, and most of those operations that I notice people do this on a daily basis are actually quite clunky. So, the worst way is to open actually a GUI program and start like clicking around. This might be okay for simple operations, but the moment you have to do something a little bit more advanced, maybe like searching files by regex or performing bulk operations on some of the files and so on, this becomes really, really inefficient. So we're going to show today how we can use a DIY approach and then some of the tools to make this process more fun and more efficient. So first is a DIY approach. So we essentially rely on existing tools, which are really building blocks that you can use for your own automation and system. I've spoken about those tools quite a lot, but let's review them again. So FZF is absolutely a workhorse as it comes to interacting with your file system. It is a fuzzy finder. So it can find anything, whether it is inside of a file or it is a file name or a directory structure, depending how you apply it, it can be done with FZF. FD is just a modern replacement for find. Those modern replacements of existing Linux programs are typically faster and they provide some added functionality, but find would work equally well. RibGrep, again, is a replacement for grep, another modern replacement. This program enables you to search inside of your files. Zoxide, it's a really neat tool that's probably could use a video on its own. But what it does, it essentially gives you a database of most frequently accessed folders and then enables you to jump to them in a smart way. And finally, BAT is a better cat, which shows the content of the file, and EXA is a little bit smarter, LS. So those tools are all really building blocks. You can use them on their own in various ways, and they definitely work well. But if you think about creating your own scripts or your own automations, then you can rely on those tools' functionality and use them as kind of like a Lego building blocks for your setup. So let's see how this could work in action. So here I have just a directory structure with lots of files, lots of folders. And let's imagine that I want to open a file. So I have a script that uses all those tools that I mentioned earlier, and I have it bound to Control F. So when I do Control F, you can see this opens up a little preview. On the left-hand side, I have a file selector, and on the right-hand side, I have a preview of this file. So let's imagine that I'm interested in all the files called slides, which are the slides that I'm showing you now. And I started writing slides, and this is a fuzzy finder in action, and it shows me, okay, so those are the slides that I found, and I can, for example, use Tab to select this first slide, and use Tab to select the other slide, and when I hit Enter, you can see that they will both open in the NeoVim. The other files happen to be empty, but they are both opened in NeoVim nicely, and I can then just quit them. And this other file was actually a directory. So I am quitting those files, and this was just an example how you can use FZF and other tools to actually search for the files themselves. Now let's imagine that I want to find all the things I wrote about Tmax. So I have another very similar script. This one uses ripgrep under the hood. I have it bound to Alt-Q, and you can see it's a slightly different layout. And now I can type Tmax, and you can see here I have all the files that I have some kind of Tmax word in. I can hit Control F, and it actually changes to the file names that contain the Tmax mention. And here I can do something similar. I can, open some of the files by selecting them with Tab. And when I hit Enter, it gives me this split window. And this actually file we have open currently. That's why it shows it's already open. So I have this split window open, and I can just interact with my files. Now I can just quickly close those, and we are back at the initial screen. So those are just examples of how the DIY automations can work. I use those shortcuts all the time. This is my primary way of interacting with my file system. I don't use ls on its own or like cd. I just do those things like that. One thing I want to show you with zoxide. So imagine that I want to change directory from where I am to maybe directory I frequently work from. Then I have it bound to Alt-J, and you can see this is zoxide in action. It shows me that the most frequented directory that I open is actually scripts folder in my .files, because I constantly add or edit my scripts. Then second one, we have .files, and the list goes on. So for me, it's very easy now to hit Enter, and you can see we jumped into the scripts folder. I can do CD- to come back to the previous folder. Let's clear screen. So there's more automations. I can show you one more. I have it bound to Control O, and this shows me all the Git files that I have changed and I can interact with. So Control O opens it, and you can see they are sorted by the last edited, apologies. So lastly, I edited this editor layout, file system, and slides. And I can do the same. I can hit Tab and open them in NeoVim, or I can also do Control F. And if I have a file that is not yet committed to the branch or changed in a branch, they would appear here. So this is another automation. So how do those scripts look like? Let's look at the open file script. So they are, by the way, all in my .files in the scripts folder. I'll leave a link in the video description. But this is literally just a bash script. Nothing crazy here. Let me just make it a little bit better. So you can see this just wraps here an FZF. In this case, it's an FZF Tmax, and it executes a preview. This might look a bit daunting. The command is pretty long, But again, you write it once, you fiddle with it a little bit, and then you have it ready and it works. And this bash script also opens here the files in NeoVim, and it is a little bit of logic how to handle multiple selections and so on. There's some help and other things. So that's how those scripts look like. Here is another example. This is a opening inside of files. So we searched for the word Tmax, and that's how you can open. This is a little bit longer, a little bit more complicated, but the scripts don't have to be complicated. You can make them also very simple. I have a few functions that are also much simpler, and they're also very useful. All right, so that was the DIY setup. So I highly encourage you, if you like tinkering, those things are, in my opinion, the best, because they are exactly doing what you need. However, if you don't like to tinker and you would like to use existing tools, I would highly recommend two tools that are terminal file managers. First one is Yazi, and this is like think of it like traditional, typical file manager. If you ever use Ranger or NNN, those are kind of very similar. We'll see them in a second. So Yazi is a spatial navigation of your file system and various folders. So it's very nice to immediately locate the context of where you are and start kind of quickly moving through directories, searching for files and so on. Another program that I really like is called Broot, and this is really more about, I like to think of it as this is a tree on steroids. So your tree command shows you your tree of your file system with nested structure of directories and folders, and Broot makes it all interactive. And if you want to keep track where you are inside of your tree structure, you can also think of it maybe a little bit like, typically if you have programs like VS Code or others, you would have a tree structure on the left-hand side. So it's kind of like this, but much, much better. So again, Broot, tree structure, really good for global search of the files, filtering of the files, and Yazi for previewing everything and kind of working with the existing context. So let's see how those programs work in action. So here you can see Yazi. This layout has a name. I forgot the name, but this is a special kind of name of this layout when you have on the left-hand side the folders, the higher up folders, and the middle part is where you are. If I start moving your cursor, you can see I'm here. And on the right-hand side, you have preview. So you notice that the files are, first of all, not sorted by name. They are sorted by access time. So I can see here, if I click, hit comma, I can see at the bottom, I can sort them by modified time. I can sort them alphabetically. So if I switch to alphabetic sort, then I have this. And Yazi in and of itself is very extensible, very configurable. You can do all kinds of things with it, but I'm going to show you just a few. So we talked about searching. So if I'm interested in finding, let's say, all the slides, if I hit S, which is Yazi's shortcut for using FD under the hood, if you have FD installed, Yazi will use it and integrate. So let's say I want to do slides MD. And you can see now I have all the slides MD found in various folders. Okay, I can, for example, now maybe I want to do something like select all of them, and I can do R for rename. And you can see what happens here. Yazi dropped me into a Vim buffer, and this is a very nice renaming capability. So you can treat the folder structure, the directory structure, and file names in this case as Vim buffer. So I can, for example, drop here and I can say, I want to rename all the MD to SH, which wouldn't really make sense. But I can do this if I hit enter and exit this buffer by saving it. All those files will be renamed. So it's very powerful, and this is actually an integration that you get in Yazi out of the box. When we hit escape, we're going back to our regular view. Another one we can do if we do capital S, this is going to integrate with ripgrep. So previously we searched Tmax. Let's do this again, and now it searches Tmax inside of the file content, and I can use it and check it. If you can see that we also have like hidden directories like git, I can hit dot, and these files, rather not directories, will not be displayed. So this either chat history is going to be hidden. I have also preview here that doesn't work actually on SVG, but it works on various pictures and files and so on. Again, escape changes it. You can see here at the top right corner, I have these numbers 1 and 2. 1 and 2, those are actually tabs. So if I hit number 2, you see it highlighted it, and we actually are in different directory. We are in my dev folder. So I can switch between those tabs, and I can, let's say, copy a folder. So let's copy this folder, copy, and I switch to previous tab, and maybe I can just paste it here. So we pasted this folder. I can also delete it by using D. So very, very easy and kind of simple operations, very fast. Definitely, if you don't like fiddling, Yazi is a great alternative. How to get help with Yazi? It's tilde, and in tilde you get access to all the commands, and you can just press F, sort for example, and then you will see all the commands, what you can do. Again, Yazi is very extensible. You can use config files and so on. There's plenty of videos about how to do it if you're interested, but I wanted to show you just how it looks in action, how you can do it. All right, the next tool is Broot. So Broot, as you remember, is different. Here we have this kind of like view of directories. And let's say that I want to find, again, the same concept. I want to find all the slides MD. So I do like this, slides MD, and you can see it found all the slides here. And then, I can interact with it. I can, for example, toggle, so it gives me a preview. And with Broot, if I hit space, I can start executing commands. So I can do, for example, copy, and then I can do a new path of this. So which would be, maybe let's do the same like that, and file. So this was copy the slides into file. I can also use Control E and open it in. I have to go escape first. I'm sorry. So that's slides, and then Control E would open it in NeoVim, for instance. So this is all. Broot can do much more, and it has its own way of editing multiple files and so on. But the real superpower of Broot is that you can actually perform the search. So we found slides. Let's try to find also the content of the file. So I can do CR for content, and I can do Tmax like we did earlier, and you can see this gives me all the files that contain the word Tmax. And then I can hit escape, go into NeoVim mode, and I can do what I did earlier. So preview file, copy it, perform operations, and so on. So Broot is something I use a little less than Yazi. So if I would need to make an order of how often I use what, definitely the most used are the shortcuts I showed you at the beginning. Then I use Yazi for like bulk file operations, or just finding my way in a directory. And if I have a very nested hierarchical file system, then I use Broot to actually like see what's happening and what kind of things are there. So all those programs have their strengths, and they can be combined together and used and so on. So what are the key takeaways? For me, at least, it's very important to learn the combination of tools. So this kind of DIY setup, if you've learned the tools that you're using, be it FZF, FD, and others, you can combine them, and that's really useful. It just makes your workflow more efficient, makes you, I believe, a better programmer or power user, and it just saves a lot of time at the end. Takes some time to learn it, but saves a lot of time at the end. Creating custom aliases, functions, it's important because some of those things, like, they can be really long commands, so encapsulating it and just making it a muscle memory makes a lot of sense. Use fuzzy finding everywhere. That's probably the key takeaway from this video. If you forgot about anything, then check out SDF if you haven't done it. This is absolute game changer for doing anything with file system. Leveraging file previews, obviously all the programs have it, and keyboard shortcuts. That's a little bit hard part because especially if you think about Yazi and Broot, they have a different keyboard shortcuts philosophy. The same shortcut in Yazi would do something completely different in Broot. You can, of course, configure them. You can make them the same. Both programs are extensible, and you can change the shortcuts so that they are the same, but it's a little bit of tweaking there. So keyboard shortcuts, if you have things like NeoVim, your own terminal, in my case Alacrity, plus Yazi, Broot, and your own shortcuts. That's a lot of shortcuts, and they often change context. So what I'm doing with it, I actually only create a shortcut where I use something constantly. And I have just a few of those. Otherwise, I will just use command snippets or other things to help me remember the commands. All right, so that was it. That was a quick introduction to what you can do with programs like Yazi, Broot, SDF. Here is some resources you can check out. And again, there are alternatives for all those programs, but I think the main idea for me is that if you interact with your file system through terminal, it's just a completely different feeling. It's makes your workflow extremely more efficient. If you do this often enough, that you are in Linux, you are doing something, then there's no excuse not to learn it. And then you will just become more efficient and much better. All right, that's all for today. I hope you learned something from this video. Let me know in the comments what programs you are using, what tricks you're using. I really like learning other people's tricks and incorporating them with my workflow. And yeah, other than that, as always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.